Check this out.
Oh!
That's another 40.04.
432.17 ounces.
Rick Ness couldn't believe his eyes. Right in front of him stood a massive rusted trommel overflowing with gold worth $500 million. Buried in the wild, covered in dirt and vines, this forgotten machine had been hiding a fortune for who knows how long. How could something this valuable be left behind, untouched, as if it were worthless junk? Tune in, because the truth behind this abandoned gold mine is the confirmation of ancient, hidden civilizations. Digging up the past to change the future. The massive trommel, a hulking piece of mining equipment, had been swallowed by the land, covered in grime, vines, and years of neglect. Built for pure strength, this was no delicate modern contraption. It was a raw powerhouse designed to rip through tons of material daily, spitting out gold like an ATM. But back then, mining tech wasn't what it is today. The finer gold, small, valuable, and plentiful, slipped through the cracks, ignored and discarded as waste. And now that so-called waste was worth more than some entire mining operations. Before we dive deeper, one thing is certain. This abandoned fortune wasn't just forgotten, it was deliberately left behind. And the reason why will shock you even more than the gold itself.
Catch up real quick on the season.
Good job. Good job,
Good job,
gang.
boys. Good job.
Some of the nicest nuggets I've ever seen. We're gonna have ourselves a golden year here.
Rick, not one to pass up an opportunity, knew there was more to this than just an old machine and some leftover gold. Whispers had been floating around for years about an operation that vanished without a trace. Stories of miners running out of money, of shady deals gone wrong, of something or someone forcing them to leave everything behind. And now, with this rusted monster sitting in front of him, it was clear that those stories weren't just campfire tales. This was real, and Rick had just cracked it wide open. But reviving this beast wasn't going to be easy. You don't just drag a multi-ton trommel out of the wilderness like it's an old truck you found in a barn. The team had to assess the damage, figure out what could be salvaged, and most importantly, see if it could still do what it was built to do: find gold. And as they dug through the surrounding dirt, they realized something shocking. The untouched sediment near the machine was loaded with gold. Not just traces, not just specks. We're talking about some of the highest concentrations Rick had ever seen in his entire career. It was a jackpot waiting to be claimed, but there was a problem. You don't just find this much gold and expect the world to sit back and let you take it.
First scoop of the year, boys.
Rick is probably the most motivated that I've seen him, which is great. This is old Rick, but with, new outlook.
Word was getting out, and not everyone was happy about it. Rivals, jealous competitors, and maybe even some of the ghosts of the past operation wanted a piece, or wanted it gone. The team had to move fast. Setting up a processing plant, they combined old-school mining methods with modern precision, ensuring not a single particle was lost. The numbers started rolling in, and they were staggering. Day after day, gold poured in, the total value climbing at an unbelievable rate. But then came the records. Old half-buried documents, hinting at more than just this one site. This Trommel wasn't just a random machine left behind. It was part of something bigger, a network, an entire system of abandoned operations, each one possibly hiding its own fortune. These weren't just legends anymore. This was a roadmap to wealth beyond imagination. Fixing the Trommel wasn't just about making it run again. It was about unlocking the past, piecing together a story that had been buried under dirt and time. Every bolt, every rusted gear told a tale of long-gone miners who had either struck gold or lost it all. Specialists were brought in to make sure every repair was done right, because one wrong move could ruin everything. And when the machine finally roared back to life, it was as if history itself had been revived. Digging through old mining records, they stumbled upon something far more interesting than expected. Buried under years of dust and neglect was the story of miners who once worked this land, chasing gold with everything they had. These weren't just workers. They were dreamers, willing to risk everything in a brutal, unforgiving landscape. Their story turned this project into something bigger than just a gold hunt. It became a direct link to a past filled with sweat, ambition, and backbreaking effort. And just like that, an abandoned piece of machinery turned into a window into history, one that no one saw coming. Then came the big shock. This wasn't just some forgotten rust bucket. It was a TRL, a behemoth of a machine designed to pull gold from dirt, and it had been left to rot. For years, this thing sat untouched, dismissed as nothing but scrap metal, but those who knew better saw potential. What else had been overlooked? What other fortunes had people walked right past without even realizing? The gold rush may have ended, but the truth is, treasure never stops waiting to be found. Finding the old machine was just the beginning. Now everyone wanted to know if it could still pull gold. Unlocking the gold left behind. As soon as the word spread, everyone had an opinion. Experts, miners, historians. Suddenly, the TRL was all anyone could talk about. Was it still useful? Could it be salvaged? More importantly, how much gold was hidden in the sediments it once processed? Curiosity turned into obsession, and the project was no longer just about restoring an old machine. It was about rewriting history. If this massive chunk of metal could still churn out gold, it would prove that old mining sites weren't just relics. They were untapped gold fields waiting for a second chance. But before anyone could get excited, the team faced their biggest challenge: getting the thing out of there. This was no easy task. The TRL wasn't just old, it was massive. It had to be dug out, lifted, transported, and restored, all while trying to keep costs down and damage minimal. Every move had to be carefully planned, because one wrong step could turn this operation into a disaster. The deeper they got into this project, the more they realized they weren't just moving machinery, they were unearthing an entire forgotten chapter of mining history. Once the TRL was finally freed from its tomb of dirt and rust, the real work began. It wasn't just about fixing broken parts. It was about transforming this beast into something better than it had ever been. Years of corrosion were stripped away, gears replaced, engines modernized. What was once a slow, outdated machine turned into a high-powered gold-extracting monster.
Noticed them.
Yeah, they're pouring through there. Man, I don't know how I didn't notice that. I wonder what the hell those holes are there for.
I don't know. They must have had something bolted to it in the past.
Advanced sensors, automation, and real-time tracking made it more efficient than anything miners had back in the day. They weren't just bringing the TRL back to life, they were turning it into something no one had ever seen before. And then came the numbers, the kind that made jaws drop. By the time the machine was running at full capacity, the team had already pulled out a shocking amount of gold. No one expected it, but the sheer volume proved one thing loud and clear. Miners of the past had left behind more than just stories. They had unknowingly abandoned riches, buried in the very ground they walked away from. The TRL was no longer just a relic. It was a money-printing machine, proof that forgotten mines still held value in ways no one had imagined. What followed next was inevitable. With gold flowing, interest exploded. People started looking at old mines differently. If one forgotten machine could bring in millions, what else was out there? Could other pieces of discarded equipment still have life left in them? The mining industry started shifting, and suddenly abandoned sites weren't seen as useless anymore. They were potential gold mines, waiting for someone smart enough to see past the rust. Of course, success doesn't come without setbacks.
Nice. Yeah, that was yeah. You know what's funny though is that's not even it.
What do you mean?
But wait, there's
You
more.
guys can all just come up here and take a look at this.
Keeping the TRL running wasn't just about modernizing it. It was about understanding how to balance old engineering with new technology. Problems popped up constantly, from mechanical failures to environmental concerns. But the team was relentless. Every challenge was met with a solution. Every breakdown was just another step toward making the machine better. This wasn't just a gamble anymore. It was a full-fledged revolution in mining. Drones entered the picture next, mapping out gold-rich areas with a level of precision that old-school prospectors could only dream of. High-resolution images revealed exactly where to dig, removing all the guesswork from the process. With the TRL and drone technology working together, gold recovery became faster, smarter, and more efficient. The past and the future had officially collided, and the result was a method of mining that changed the game entirely. At this point, there was no denying it. What started as an abandoned hunk of metal had turned into one of the biggest gold mining success stories in recent history. The TRL wasn't just a machine anymore. It was a symbol of what could be done when people dared to look beyond the obvious. It proved that opportunity isn't always found in new ideas. Sometimes it's hiding in old forgotten places, just waiting for someone with enough vision to see its true worth. The machine was finally running, but no one was ready for how much gold it was about to find. An old machine just changed mining forever. The day finally arrived to fire up the TRL, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. This wasn't just about running an old machine, it was a full-blown gamble. The moment the massive drum started spinning, dirt and debris poured in, and within minutes, gold began flowing out. And not just a little, a shocking amount. The numbers were mind-blowing, pulling in millions in gold, far beyond what anyone had expected. The machine that had been written off as an outdated hunk of metal had just proved everyone wrong in the biggest way possible. What happened next sent shockwaves through the mining industry. If an old abandoned piece of equipment could pull this off, what else had been left behind? It was a loud and clear message. Maybe the mining world had been too quick to toss out the past in favor of expensive, high-tech machines. The TRL wasn't just making money, it was exposing a flaw in the industry's way of thinking. And it didn't take long for people to start digging through records, looking for other forgotten machines that might be hiding untapped riches. But let's not pretend this was all about nostalgia. The real takeaway here was that mining didn't have to mean destruction. By upgrading an old machine instead of building a new one, the team had drastically cut down on waste. The TRL was running cleaner, pulling more gold, and proving that mining didn't have to come at the planet's expense. That alone had people talking. Miners, engineers, environmentalists. Everyone wanted to know what was next. Of course, not everything was perfect. Something was off with the gold distribution. One side was producing more than the other. That raised some red flags. Was something wrong with the TRL? Or worse, was something happening beneath the surface that they hadn't accounted for?
You have a problem with Lucifer. So you have a feed direction problem or a chute that's blocked off down in the distributor or something. Something's going on.
When you're dealing with millions of dollars in gold, those kinds of questions need answers, fast. The success of this project sparked something even bigger. Prospectors, miners, and historians alike were suddenly obsessed with old mining equipment, searching archives for blueprints, schematics, and abandoned sites. The industry, which had spent years chasing the newest and most expensive solutions, was now looking backward, wondering what they had overlooked. What else was hidden under decades of rust and dust? But this was more than a treasure hunt. It was a new way of thinking. If the past still had value, what other mining methods had been thrown away too soon? Could mining become more sustainable, more efficient, and more profitable all at the same time? The TRL was more than just a lucky break. It was a warning shot to an industry that had gotten too comfortable with its own methods. The TRL's transformation wasn't just about recovering gold. It was a direct challenge to old-school thinking. The belief that mining had to rip through the land, leaving destruction in its wake, was outdated. The TRL had managed to produce massive amounts of gold while keeping environmental damage to a minimum. It wasn't just efficient, it was revolutionary. And if this machine could do it, why weren't others following the same path? As the news spread, mining companies started reevaluating their own operations. Were they wasting potential profits by ignoring older equipment?
So there's a lot of pressure on revenue right now. We haven't had that sort of pressure in a while. But with 2 plants running, we have a shot.
Was their expensive modern machinery really worth the cost when something decades old was outperforming it? The TRL had forced a reckoning, and no one wanted to be the last to adapt. And then came the real test. Long-term viability. This wasn't about a single good run. Could the TRL keep up its performance? Or was this just a fluke? The team doubled down, refining the system, adjusting processes, and making sure every ounce of gold was accounted for. Meanwhile, word spread beyond just miners. Investors, environmental groups, and even government agencies started paying attention. The TRL wasn't just making money. It was proving that mining didn't have to be as destructive as it had always been. That's when things really took off. But here's the kicker. This wasn't just about one machine. Across the region, abandoned mining equipment was being reassessed. What if the TRL wasn't the only one with gold still left in it? It was no longer just a mining story, it was an industrial shift. The TRL had changed everything. The TRL was working better than ever, but as they kept digging, they realized they weren't just finding gold. Gold still runs through forgotten land. Then came the next challenge, pushing the TRL even further. Engineers and geologists worked side by side, trying to find ways to improve its efficiency. They dug into its history, analyzing old mining records to see if the TRL had originally been used to its full potential. The answer? Not even close. This machine had been retired too soon, abandoned before anyone truly understood what it was capable of. As upgrades continued, something unexpected happened. The TRL started uncovering gold in areas previously thought to be tapped out. Old miners' maps had been wrong. The deposits ran deeper, wider, and richer than anyone had imagined. That realization sent a ripple effect through the industry. What if every old mining site had been abandoned too soon? How much gold had been left behind over the years? At this point, there was no turning back. What had started as a risky experiment had turned into an undeniable success. The TRL was no longer just an old machine. It was a blueprint for the future of mining. A reminder that sometimes the best ideas aren't new at all. They've just been forgotten. As the TRL continued its record-breaking performance, people started looking at mining differently. It wasn't just about chasing gold. It was about questioning assumptions, pushing boundaries, and refusing to accept that something was finished just because it looked old. The past still had value if people were willing to see it. And that's where the real impact of the TRL came in. It wasn't just a successful project, it was a challenge to an entire industry. If one forgotten machine could change everything,
Mitch and Tyson have their hands full with 2 plants running. They're right on the edge of keeping up with where we need to be in order to get all of the ground mined this season.
what else had been overlooked? What other industries were throwing away potential gold mines in disguise? They said the TRL was done, just another piece of junk rusting away in the middle of nowhere. But now it's a beast ripping through dirt like it was built yesterday, spitting out gold like the past never ended. What was once left to rot is now working harder, faster, and smarter than ever before. This isn't just some lucky break. It's proof that the right mix of grit and brains can turn a scrap heap into a gold mine. The TRL isn't just running, it's roaring, and the whole mining world is paying attention. This old machine isn't just digging up gold, it's digging up ideas, shaking the industry awake. For too long, mining companies have ditched their old tools, writing them off as useless. Parker and his team just flipped the script, proving that these so-called relics still have plenty of fight left in them. The success of this project isn't just about profit, it's a wake-up call to stop wasting potential. And now others are watching, wondering what other abandoned machines could be brought back to life. The ripple effect is massive. From Australia to South America, mining teams are eyeing their own graveyards of forgotten equipment, hoping to pull off the same trick. It turns out the so-called golden age of mining isn't over. It's just been buried under decades of neglect. With the right approach, entire operations can be revived without drilling new holes or wrecking new lands. Instead of throwing millions at new machinery, miners are realizing they can rebuild, reuse, and still strike it rich. And it's not just the mining giants taking notice. Local communities near these sites are buzzing with new energy. Old mining towns that had gone quiet are seeing businesses open back up. Restaurants, hardware stores, and suppliers are feeling the shift. Where there was once dust and silence, there's movement, jobs, and real hope. What started as a simple machine restoration has turned into an economic spark plug, proving that mining doesn't have to be a one-and-done operation. Environmentalists are watching too, and surprisingly, some of them aren't mad. Mining has always been a dirty business, but Parker's team has found ways to do it better. Less waste, smarter processes, and a focus on sustainability. This isn't just about making money, it's about changing the game. When people hear mining, they usually picture destruction, but what if it could actually be part of the solution? What if the key to the future isn't in new mines, but in the old ones we already abandoned? Could this abandoned Trommel be the result of a lost fortune, a hidden crime, or something even more shocking? Tell us what you think, and remember to like and subscribe for more.